Welcome to the Go Big Redcast with Dave, Honky, Boomer, and Redcast Rob.
Welcome to the Go Big Redcast. This is a special edition LunchCast today, and we have an extra special guest in Adam Carriker, former Husker player and NFL, I guess defensive end, defensive tackle. They moved you around quite a bit in your playing career. How you doing today?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Oh, man, I am doing pretty fantastic. It's May 4th. You may have seen my tweet out there of me dressing up as Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I host trivia nights for a company called Geeks Who Drink. And so sometimes I get to really nerd out and get to dress up like that. So, and I know you've probably heard of Geeks Who Drink because you live here in Colorado, right? And it's at we do it at all the local bars, things like that. So,
yeah, I have. I did see the picture and the tweet as well. I did think your lightsaber would be bigger.
Well, that's okay. And there's a few people out there who thought that too. But quite frankly, I had to borrow my son's lightsaber for that day, and
Gotcha.
don't worry. I try not to put my personal lightsaber out there in public.
There you go. It's a good idea
these days. So we do have a few things that we want to talk about before we get the show fully started here. First of all, if those of you who are watching right now, if you haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, go ahead and do that. Also, kind of a big announcement here. I know that you'll be interviewing Coach Tom Osborne tomorrow over on the Carriker Chronicles on YouTube, part of the Omaha World Herald Network, I believe, on YouTube. Is that correct? And then,
that is correct.
And then our show with Coach actually got moved. So I was going to be interviewing him on May 9th at 1 p.m. and that got moved to the 11th because of some scheduling conflicts on both sides. And I'm still just honored to be talking to the living legend himself, and it's great. I've said it before, texting with Tom Osborne is really surreal for just a normal human being like me who was not a Husker. And so it's a pretty amazing thing. And speaking of being a Husker, let's see, you played for Nebraska from 2002 through 2007. Is that right? You redshirted 2002 season or?
Yeah, I redshirted in 2002. So I technically played 2003, 4, 5, and 6.
Yeah.
2003 to 2006 when I technically played.
Okay, so you were recruited by Solich, or who were you? You were recruited by Solich and then played for Callahan then, right?
Yeah, so Coach George Darlington, he was the one who had the West Coast where I grew up. So I dealt with him mostly, but yeah, Solich, Darlington, and then I think after my third year, going into my third year, I can't remember, halfway through, that's when I found out on ESPN they were letting Solich go, and then Callahan came in, and I finished my career with Callahan.
Okay, yeah. So it's well-known fact in Redcast Nation here that I'm a big Raiders fan. And we don't have to talk about Bill Callahan if you don't want to. He did take us to a Super Bowl. We did lose that Super Bowl to John Gruden, but and with the Huskers, I know it was kind of a up and down career with that, but what was your time with the Huskers like? I mean, for you, kind of what did you take away most from that whole experience? Because I see you now and I see pictures of you then, and you look like a completely different person. I know that you've been having some issues yourself personally lately with some stuff going on, and I just it looks like you're taking really good care of yourself. So, maybe you want to talk a little bit about that and your experience as a Husker and kind of where it's led you now.
Yeah, so we can talk about anything. It doesn't matter. Callahan, Solich, Pelini, it don't matter. Depends on how far in the weeds you want to go. I'm open to anything. As far as the Raiders, we can chat Raiders. My son is about as anti-Bronco a fan as you're gonna find, and the Raiders are his favorite team. So I hear about the Raiders all the time. The only thing I really know about Callahan's time with the Raiders is, didn't he say he had the dumbest players in the league or something like that? I remember that for some reason. And then I know that, he was kind of running the same plays, and I think Gruden knew exactly what they were going to do before they ran it in the Super Bowl. I've heard that thing a million times, but Callahan was always good to me. As far as my time with Nebraska, I almost look at it as two completely separate, different eras while I was there, because you had the Solich era, and you had, you know, the weightlifting platform. The first time I was ever in the weight room as a Husker, I sat down on that thing, which you don't do. Seniors immediately came over and ripped into me like a monkey on a cupcake. You do not sit on that thing unless your name is on it. That thing was gone a couple of years later when Callahan came in. So it was kind of the blue collar, double team power, running the option and those kinds of things. And obviously, you know, Callahan comes in, he recruits a lot more skill position guys, very different offense, very different mentality, very different approach. So for me, I felt like I had part of the historical Nebraska experience, you know, power football, all those things. And then I kind of had a glimpse into what the NFL was going to look like, so to speak, kind of. You know, there were times at the end of my career where it was very hard. I was dating my wife, Angie. Obviously we weren't married at the time, but I was like, you know, there were times it was hard, if I'm being honest, to get fully motivated to go because the coach had one thought, which was very different than my first couple of years, what I'd been taught the Nebraska way was. And so to me, there was a disconnect there. And I think that led to some struggles later on. So for me, I literally had to find ways to motivate myself. Like my lifelong dream was to play at Nebraska. You didn't have to motivate me. I was uber motivated. And then as things started to change with different philosophies and, you know, we're not going to do things the way they were done for 40 years. For me, that was a challenge. And so I had to find ways to motivate myself, which wasn't uber hard to do, but harder than you might think when it's a struggle, when you're seeing certain things every day. My overall career at Nebraska, I wish we'd have won more. I wish we'd have won a championship. I wish I'd have done some things different on a personal level. I'm proud of some things I did. It's a little bit of combination of everything. It was a lifelong dream come true. It wasn't exactly what I expected when the coaching transition came in. But I look back on it as a great learning experience overall fondly with some great lessons learned. Because anytime there's difficult times, you can either give in or you can get better. And I honestly felt like I learned, got better and stronger from those times.
Well, yeah. And I mean, it did lead to you being the 17th overall pick in the NFL draft in the first round. So there was a graphic that ran across the bottom there, said you're one of 33 Husker greats to have been selected in the first round. So you obviously were able to stay focused enough to do that. And, you know, I'm sure a lot of that just had to do on your talent alone. Did you ever consider playing quarterback in college? I mean, you were made what, first team all team or second team all team in high school on a team, I guess, that struggled, right? Your senior year, but to say the least, we don't have to talk about that if you don't want to, for sure. But, you know, I know that you played both defense and offense and you were the quarterback. So you were obviously the man on your team. What kind of led you to be a defensive guy and, you know, how, you know, is that how you were recruited?
Yeah, no, again, we can talk about anything when it comes to high school. Yeah, we weren't just 0-9 my senior year. We were two wins and 34 losses in 4 years.
Oh, so wow.
Yeah, I'm 20. What is it? 20 years later, I'm finally over it. We can finally talk about it. A year ago, I wasn't okay with it. You know, my sophomore year was the year I started becoming the starter, and my head coach, he goes, "You're going to play safety on defense," and I was like, "Do I look like a safety?" He goes, "I don't want you getting touched. You're going to be the quarterback for the next 3 years." And I was like, "Okay, fine. Who doesn't want to be the quarterback?" So my junior year, he said, "You're not even going to play defense." He said, "You're going to be the quarterback, and when we run the offensive part of practice, you're going to run the offense. And then when we go to the defensive priority of practice, you're going to run the scout team offense." So my junior year, I didn't even play defense. So basically for 2 years, I didn't play any sort of real defense in high school. Going into my senior year, I was never crazy about quarterback. Who doesn't like playing quarterback? Me. I was never crazy about it. You know, I liked hitting people. I like getting up. You got a little bit of blood in your mouth, or you can't walk right because you're bruised and I was known as the guy with the most ice bags in the training room afterwards, just because I liked physical contact. So I told my coach, I said, I want to play defense. And he looked at me, and at the time, he probably wasn't wrong. As much as I enjoyed those things, I may not have outwardly have shown them. I was much quieter for most of my life than I am now. And he goes, "You're too nice to play defense." And looking back, he was probably right. I said, "But I want to play defense." And he said, "Well, you still need to play quarterback. We need a quarterback." And I said, "That's perfectly fine." But going into my senior year, nobody had any tape of me on defense. I'd never played D-line. Middle school, freshman year, I was a linebacker. Then I was a safety. Then I didn't play. So when I went to a bunch of camps trying to get noticed, Oregon State, Nebraska, all these camps, I got way more offers as a quarterback, not at Nebraska, not as a triple option quarterback. That wasn't me. I did like 15 minutes of quarterback drills in Nebraska's camp, and Turner Gill goes, "The defensive guys are down there." Like I did not fit that offensive scheme. But what's funny is at the end of the camp, the D-line coach looked at me and he goes, "You're not good enough to play here." And that was really my first experience playing D-line. And by the end of the year, we'd send in some game films. And I think my last game my senior year was against a school called Moses Lake. They ran the triple option. If I remember right, I had like 22 tackles. We sent that in. And he goes, "You've improved a lot." They offered me to walk on. Ultimately, I did end up getting the scholarship. So that's kind of how that all worked out. I much preferred defense, even though, people wanted me as a quarterback more than, but that's just what I preferred.
So I wore my black shirt just for you today too. And that we got a question from Husker Nut here that said, "What did it mean to get your black shirt for the first time, and how did they go about giving it to you back then?"
It was my lifelong dream coming true. Like my dream wasn't to play in the NFL or Major League Baseball, or I'm a pro wrestling fan, even to, be a pro wrestler. My dream was to play at Nebraska, and I wanted to play defense. So my dream was to be a black shirt. And so that was literally my lifelong dream coming true. And I still remember it to this day. I walked into the locker room and it was hanging there in the locker, or in my locker. And, they didn't have Twitter, Snap.
The pomp and circumstance that you see today.
Yeah. Facebook was the Facebook. I don't know if anybody remembers the.
I remember. Yeah. Drop the. Yeah,
there you go. And so, had they recorded, me that day, like they do guys nowadays, they would have seen a very big guy shedding a lot of tears, on the Facebook or whatever outlet they would have put out on. But I still remember the practice. Like it was like I was running on a cloud. I didn't get tired the entire day. I think I ran like a 4.340 everywhere I was going because I felt so fast.
Which is crazy because you ran like a 4.79 in the combine, I think, or something like that. So
yeah, it was something like I think 4.72 or something like that. But it was kind of like I remember that practice. I remember that day. And it was like I didn't get tired. It was almost like I was watching myself practice from above. It was kind of crazy. It was like a dream, so to speak.
I hear that. You want to do me a favor? Put your hand back up too, because I want any kids watching to see. Like, hold it back a little bit. If you can see some of the bends in his hands too, like those are NFL players' hands and pinkies, like right there. Like you put your hand up a minute ago, and I was like, holy cow! So I mean, playing in the NFL, right? You played for two NFL teams, right? Like technically, like as far as stats go, and it was the LA Rams drafted you 17th overall in the first round, and then I think 2 years later you got traded to the Washington. Well, at the time they were the Redskins, and they were the football team. Now they're the Commanders. And I know that you still do some work for the Washington team here and there. I think, don't you do some writing or something for them or a radio show here and there? What was that like, your time in the NFL, out there playing? Like, do you have any like one or two specific memories that like, maybe that aren't talked about, say like in like the greatest games of all time or anything, but like sometime like an interaction with another player or anything like that you specifically remember, that when you're together with the guys, that's what you talk about?
Yeah, like you said, so they were in St. Louis at the time, the St. Louis Rams. And I got traded to the Redskins, and then I signed back as a free agent after that year. The first time I walked into the Rams locker room, so I grew up watching The Greatest Show on Turf. Yeah. And Isaac Bruce was still there. Torrey Holt, Orlando Pace. Falk was gone, but Steven Jackson. Mark Bolger was coming off his best ever, Pro Bowl and all that stuff. And I'm walking into the locker room, and I'm like, I was in like middle school when I was watching these guys win a Super Bowl or something like that. So, that was kind of surreal. I think playing in some of the places and against some of the players I got to play with and against, I grew up watching Larry Allen, the greatest guard of all time. He was my second game. And
I went to college with him.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I went to Sonoma State University, and he was like a junior or senior when I was a freshman.
Yeah. So playing against him in my second game ever, of course, they moved me to nose guard, so I'm learning a new position. Then I'm going against Larry Allen, the guy who legit bench presses 800, doesn't just say he does. I remember the first time, actually my favorite team, or I'd grown up, was the Cowboys. And I remember the first time we ever played them at the Hole in the Roof, back before Jerry World. I remember playing at Jerry World. But
so God can watch his favorite team play.
Oh, man. Or he can take a leak on him, whatever. I actually walked out of there hating the Cowboys that day, and there was no reason for it. It just, I hated them. And
you were a Redskin. You were supposed to hate.
Well,
them.
I was
that with the Rams? Oh, you were a Ram too.
Then I went to the Commanders, the Redskins, whatever, and it was perfect because they hate the Cowboys. Our first preseason game ever. We don't play the Cowboys for like 6 weeks, but my first preseason game with them against the Bills, they're chanting, "We want Dallas," so it was like the perfect blend. I hate them. They don't like them. It was perfect.
That's great.
For me, just getting to be around guys that I'd watched growing up going against, some of the all-time greats, 2012, when Robert took off and he set the league on fire, we started out 3-6 that year. Yeah. And then we won 7 straight games, won the NFC East championship, had home field in the playoffs, and then the infamous, he tears his ACL and they put him back in the game. And there's a picture of him hurting it worse, and the knee's like going the wrong way. And should he have gone back in? Should he not? Albert Hainsworth, he was a blast to deal with.
What is it with Redskins quarterbacks and their knees going the wrong direction?
I don't know.
I remember the Monday night game watching Joe Theismann get hurt by oh God, now all of a sudden the name escapes me. But what's that?
Lawrence Taylor.
Lawrence Taylor, yeah. So I remember watching that. I was actually kind of in a weird circle of life thing. My friend Stuart Williams, I was at his house watching that game. And then, of course, about 20, 30 years later, Stuart Williams sent me a book, a signed autograph book of Tom Osborne that I'm sitting right here. So it's kind of a weird circle of life. And I remember all these weird things about people, but it's so it's funny because in the 90s, I actually rooted for the Cowboys. I've always been a Raider fan, but I rooted for him because I went to school with Larry. And then Jay Novacek is my second cousin. So,
okay.
Yeah. So you actually, you didn't play against him though. He was
after me, but
he was way out of the league by then.
Yeah, I grew up watching him.
But yeah, and Larry too, eventually he moved on to the Niners, which kind of I regret. I always wished he had been a Raider, but so I rooted for the Cowboys in the 90s only for those reasons. But it's funny because now I see him and I'm like, God, like I can't stand this team anymore. So it's a whole different scenario.
I have no idea why it switched for me. I just walked off the field that day absolutely hating them, and there was no reason for it. I think from my time in the NFL, it's the cool people that I got to be around, play with, play against, learn from, get to become friends with, keep in touch with to this day. So for me, I think that was the coolest thing. It would have been cooler had we beat the Seahawks that day, not lost to them on the home field. But then I think they ended up in the Super Bowl that year or the next, so they weren't too bad themselves.
So yeah, it's funny too because you're 6'6", and I think at the height of your career you were 300 pounds or 330 pounds. Something along those lines. Is that right?
Are you talking college or NFL?
NFL.
The heaviest I ever was, one day during training camp, I got on the scale and I was 320.
Jeez.
And then like the next day after a hot day, I was like 308. I lost like 12 pounds in one day. So
I guess when you're 320 pounds, losing 12 pounds is like losing your pinky or something along those lines.
Well, when it's hot and that's back before they got rid of 2-a-days, and I'll tell you what, Nebraska's hot and humid. St. Louis is on another level. Virginia, we actually practice in Ashburn, Virginia, is on another level, which I found out pretty quick.
Yeah, it's like you can shower, walk outside, and it's basically like you're still in the shower. I experienced some of that traveling around the country for an old job that I had, and I growing up in Northern California, when they talk about humidity, it's a little different because it's like ocean air and fog. And so I was like, oh, East Coast humidity, that's nothing. And I get out there and I was just like, I'm never living in this part of the world.
That is not the same thing.
No.
The worst I've ever experienced, by the way, congrats to Redcast Honky on putting on 12 pounds in one day in his life. That's awesome. I'm sure it was all muscle. But the worst I have ever experienced was when I was rehabbing my knee in Pensacola, Florida, and it's mid-August. And it's like 2 or 3 in the afternoon, and I'm out running on the turf. So it's Florida. It's mid-August. It's like the hottest part of the day. It's on turf. And literally, like, I would run, and it'd be like normally you get like a 20, 30-second break in between, and you just chill. No, I wasn't just getting water. We had ice towels, and like we were dunking it on each other in between because it was like, I mean, it's not like life or death, but my gosh, it felt like
it feels like it. I've experienced it. And then there's grasshoppers the size of your foot, like running around or flying through the air. So let's talk a little bit too about kind of what you're doing now. I was watching a really good video that you kind of like an instant reaction that you did about some of the current new guys that they're adding to the defense for Nebraska, right? And you being a defensive guy, and we talked about it on our regular show a little bit last night, and I brought that up, but you know, I'm excited because you kind of seem almost like when you see the right things happening, you kind of get this optimistic tone of voice that I really enjoy hearing, right? Like I don't like negativity. I always like to look at the positive, right? And being a fan of some of the teams I am, you kind of have to keep that perspective or you just be miserable. And it seems like with
saying your teams aren't very good.
Well, you know, I'm an A's fan. I'm a Raiders fan. I've been a Warriors fan my entire life, so they're pretty good now. And then of course, you know, Nebraska, the last 5, 6, 7 years, it's been a little difficult. But, you know, with the addition of guys like Mathis and Drew here in the last couple of days, I heard you say some things about the possibilities with Chenander's defense and some of the schemes. And maybe you can talk a little bit about that for some of the fans that are listening, because I liked the ideas that you had. I love like watching fun defense, watching guys, you know, blitz, things like that. So can you talk a little bit about what you foresee possibly happening with this defense?
So, I mean, for probably about the past decade or so, you know, we've had some guys who could get after the quarterback, but nobody who was able to do it on a consistent high level. Even Randy Gregory did it his 1 year, and then his senior year, he was banged up. It's hard to consistently do it year after year. So we've always had one guy who could potentially get after it, but we haven't been able to find one who could consistently do it, and certainly not more than one. And so if I'm Eric Chenander, I'm trying to find ways to get pressure on the quarterback. So most folks would probably be like, hey, you don't have a top flight pass rusher. You've got to bring these exotic blitzes. Well, that's great if you got people who can cover, and you still need people who can break free and get there. Otherwise, you're just going to give up big, gigantic chunk plays. But now, so he doesn't have to blitz all the time because he's got guys who can win one-on-one battles. But the other thing, the reason I went to the blitzes, and number one, it's something that excites me. But number two, when you've got so many potential really good pass rushers like O'Shawn Mathis, Garrett Nelson, Caleb Tanner, and I look at a guy like Jamari Butler. You watch him just move. He's a physical athlete. Hopefully he can put it together to get on the field. Blaise Gunnarson's another possibility. It's like, okay. And then you've got Luke Reimers, you got Henrich. How do you get these guys all on the field? So third down, because you can't do it on first down very often.
Yeah.
You're going to be undersized. So third down is where I go. And if you're going to put a guy like Garrett Nelson, who's a weight room warrior, strong as all get out, but if you're going to put him on the line, especially on the tackle, he's going to be undersized. So you've got to move him. And that's where like the stunting and the blitzing and all that stuff came in. How do you get them all on the field? How do you make it an appropriate situation? And how do you take advantage of what you have? So, I mean, you know, Tanner, I thought he would be heavier. He's 225. He's moving quick and light. I mean, that's basically a big safety or a small linebacker. You know, if you want to put him at end, that's great in pass rush situations. Mathis is obviously an outside back or DN type. Nelson's the one I would put possibly inside next to Robinson in nickel type situations. You could go 30 defense with 3D linemen, 4 backers. You know, if you're talking about 30 and you're talking about you want to keep Henrich and Reimer on the field, and then you want to keep Nelson, maybe Butler, maybe Mathis, maybe all these guys. Now you've got some tiny linemen in a 30 front, which is not a good idea because you got to have some size. So that's why I went nickel and doing some of those things. But now you can stunt and you can blitz. You can have backers shoot the A gaps with the tackle stunting outside. You can have backers showing like they're going to blitz, then they back out, which could draw a block. And now your tackles are one-on-one with the guards, your D tackles. But now maybe they're short a blocker or two because I've been blocking this guy. Now he's not coming, but now I'm not double teaming. But now you're dropping extra guys and you still got the one-on-one, so you don't have the risk in the back end. You know, maybe the backers are coming off the tackles' butts because the tackles can shoot inside. Now the backers are coming through the B gap instead of the A gap. And so you've got guards and centers. By the way, the center has to snap, which is not Nebraska fans take for granted anymore. So is the backer coming? Is he dropping? Is the tackle going to ear hole me? Is he going to go straight? By the way, if I screw up, what about the snap? You know, I've got all these things to think about. Oh, by the way, if they just lined up and went one-on-one, this guard versus Garrett Nelson, Garrett Nelson's got a great chance to win to begin with, even if you didn't do anything to try to confuse me. And so the possibilities are endless of what they could do. I think the biggest challenge he's going to have is making the package not too big.
Yeah.
Making it something that is simple for you, but confusing for them. And if you want to bring the house, you can. If you want to bring one, you can. Or if you want to look like you're bringing the house and dropping it, you can. But it doesn't confuse your guys, but it looks the same to the offense. So the quarterback isn't sure what to audible, and the offensive lineman, you know, because one of the key things you can do is you can draw an offensive lineman's block and then drop into coverage. So now they're really blocking with 4 guys or 3 instead of 5, but either you're blitzing the house or you're not. And that to me is what is so much fun. I love defense. I coach my son.
I could tell.
I coach my son's 6th grade football team. I don't coach the offense. Every youth sport coach I know is the head coach of their team so they can get their kid the ball and they can run the offense. Well, I don't get my kid the ball because I don't want to run the offense. I love defense. I have another guy who does that. I'm the only head coach, I think, in the entire state who runs the defense and not the offense. But that's what I love.
It's funny because I have my son wants to start playing high school football next year, and he's been in some flag leagues, and every time that they ask me to coach, that's what I want to do is the defense, because it feels, I don't want to say defense is easier, but defense is way more fun because, you know, you can tell these guys like, okay, you know, count to 2, like you tell a kid, count to 2 in your head, then break for this or break for that, or stick with this guy and just keep, you know, I don't care where he goes on the field or wherever, you know, you stick with him, keep him in your hip pocket. One guy you didn't mention in all that, I was just
going to say defense for youth sports.
Yeah.
In general, defense is 1,000 times easier. Like you've got to get the O-line together. You've got to get the snap count, the handoff. Oh my God, try shotgun with 6th graders. Put a guy in motion.
You can't even get the kid to hike the ball. Yeah. Like,
if one guy messes up, your quarterback's getting killed. Now the quarterback's pissed. The O-lineman's pissed. He's not the quarterback. The running back wants to be the quarterback. This guy wants to be a lineman. By the way, you got to get them on the same page. And here I am. Oh, we're just going to blitz a crap load of people, and you got to get the ball off. Good luck. You know, defense is 1,000 times easier, especially in youth sports.
Yeah. So one guy that you didn't mention, going through all those, and I'm curious your take on him, because I think this could be a really good breakout year for him, is Nash, right? The polar bear. And you mentioned like a lot of your stuff is happening on 3rd down, but like 1st and 2nd down, stopping the run, plugging up the middle. Husker Nut asked another question too about if you've heard that if they'll be running more of a 4-man front next season, and what type of players do you need to run that, and does NU have them now?
So there are strong rumors that they will be moving to a 4-man front. I don't think anybody knows for sure right now because we don't know who we're going to have on the D-line for sure.
Yeah, we're still signing guys. Yeah. Obviously,
he's ran a 3-man front the whole time he's been here. They've had 4-man packages, especially, you know, passing situations. I have heard strong rumors just because of the lack of experience when it comes to the tackles that they were going to go 4-man. My gut tells me that they will. You know, Devin Drew, obviously, he started all year for Texas Tech. You got Ty Robinson, but you got to get at least one more guy from the portal. Hopefully, he's a playmaker. If they do that and Nash plays well, they could stay 30 with 4 backers. It wouldn't shock me, but it depends on who they get. And right now it's completely up in the air. So as far as Nash, no, he absolutely occurred to me. Number one, he's a young guy, and you don't want to, listen to everything, not the youth sports stuff, but like everything that I threw out possibility wise on 3rd down. Mm-hmm. So he hasn't even been here an entire year yet. Okay. And you're counting on him, I guess, now to be your starting nose guard at this point in time. So young guys stepping up in the line happen a lot more than when I was coming out. Skill like wide receivers, DBs, those guys tended to play earlier, but the linemen, you got to get bigger, faster, stronger, that physical development. Guys are coming out of high school better than they ever were, and Nash is absolutely one of those guys. That guy's very, very strong. I think I didn't bring him up because he's obviously very strong. He obviously is going to contribute on first and second down. I think you don't want to – I don't know if his forte right now is in the pass rush scenario. There was other guys that I mentioned, like a Messiah Newsom or somebody like that, who may have the edge in that particular department, a little bit more explosive. So that was one reason. Another is you're going to need that guy on first and second down. Right now, we don't have a whole lot of run stoppers, so you need him to be effective, and the last thing you want to do is wear him out physically but overload him mentally, because that third down package, it might be more extensive than the first and second down. And obviously, he's going to have to know it to a degree. But if he can focus, sometimes less is more, where he's a young guy. If he can focus on first and second down, he might be that much better for you, where you already have more weapons on third down. You may not need to overload him at this point.
Yeah, it's I'm kind of excited. I'm the Kool-Aid guy. You see me, and I'm saying 15-0 this year. Until I'm proven wrong, I'm right.
There you go.
And so I'm kind of excited too. I think I'm calling it Frost 2.0, right? So it's like we got ourselves a new head coach. We got ourselves all new offensive guys too. So in the defense, we just need to plug some holes there and get it in. So I'm really excited for this season. It's I don't know how you're looking at it. I do see some of the videos that you post and watch those. And like I said, you're always looking at like, here's what we should be doing or could be doing, right? It's never like, this is why we failed or anything like that. So I can appreciate that about you. Do you spend a lot of time going back to Lincoln, around the team, as a former player, as a former draft pick? I mean, you're automatically your Husker legend. Is for you, do you spend a lot of time around the program still at all?
So I try to go back every spring. I was scheduled to go back this spring due to the heart. It was like, you know what, the less I do right now, the better. So I ended up emailing them and saying I wasn't going to be there for the spring game, but I was supposed to go back. And I usually go to 2 home games in the fall, usually one around Labor Day. Jacob's football team usually has that weekend off, a bye week. Okay. And then we're usually done by November. So I go to a November game. I'm looking at Wisconsin this year. I probably spent more time, if I'm being honest, going back and interacting when Riley was there and when Frost first got there. After about year 2, for me, it was because I know how it could be when you're struggling and you're having a hard time. And I see myself as a former player who happens to do a show. I am well aware there are people who see me that way, but I'm well aware not everybody does. And so I can tell the people who see me as a media member first. And for me, I didn't want to be the former player who was abusing his former player privileges to take advantage of that in the media. And I felt like nobody said anything, but I got the feeling from a couple of people, they kind of felt that way. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna back off a little bit. I'll chat with those who are comfortable, but I don't want to give anyone else a negative feeling. Like legit, I could stop the show tomorrow and I'd be just fine, other than I would miss and be miserable not talking Husker football, because my priority is being a former player first. So I backed off a little bit, just for that reason. But I'm sure if I said, hey, can I come visit with you or do this or that, I'm sure they've always been more than welcome.
So you touched on it briefly too. You want to give us any health updates? We got another question about that, asking about you, and I know you've been really public talking about your heart issues. How is that going for you? You taking it easy?
Yeah. So I've chosen to be more public with this. I think like when my wife was on bed rest for months with the twins, I never said a word. She's a more private type person, but I know sometimes when people are going through things, it can be hard to be forthcoming with them. Some people, it's just hard for them. And so if they see someone else who's doing it, even if it's not a heart issue, sometimes, it can be easier for them. This is obviously not a mental health thing, but one of the first things that comes to my mind is mental health or physical issues or whatever. So, I have a great support system, so that's helped a lot. People have been reaching out. I've talked to people I ain't talked to in like 15 years. So that was phenomenal. The health update, essentially, I'm actually, as soon as we're done here, I've seen 2 doctors, 2 cardiologists. they have a little bit of varying opinions on what we should do next. So I'm seeing like a tiebreaker, so to speak. Essentially, it's going to be our decision here. What's probably going to happen is they need to freeze parts of the heart because the odds are I'm going to go back into AFib at some point. And where I'm so young, it's frankly a little bit kind of scary how often it might happen, how severe it might be, especially if it happens over and over time. So the idea is probably doing this second surgery, and then hopefully that will prevent the AFib from happening. But the one doctor, the reason he's kind of hesitant to do it, he's like, most people don't know when they go into AFib. They'll be in AFib for like 3 months. They'll show up for their once a year health checkup, and then we find it. He's like, you knew. Like, my heart was pounding. I was just an idiot and took forever to go in. But my heart was pounding. And he's like, so you've got that alarm clock most people don't have. He's like, your heart's going to go into AFib at some point. But is it a year from now? Is it 10 years from now? We don't know. And if you do this surgery now where you're so young, you may have to do it once or twice more. But if you can buy 10 years, maybe you only do it once, twice at the most. He's like, also, there's a chance it goes back into AFib. And every time you do it, it weakens the heart more and more. So how many times do you want to let it go into it? So that's kind of what we're trying to figure out to do. The odds are we're going to do this surgery or procedure or whatever they call it. So that's kind of what we're probably looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really shared this publicly at all, though, but my daughter was diagnosed with AFib recently, and she's 6. So we're probably going to have to do a surgery with her sometime in the beginning of next year, right? So she's been doing school at home. We'll probably keep her doing school at home for the same thing. And it's just scary, man. Like,
yeah,
it's scary for me thinking about it for my kid. I can't imagine what it'd be like thinking about it for myself. It's some heavy stuff. My dad's had 5 heart attacks and lived through them all. And he'll probably outlive all of us, Adam. Let me tell you, he'll be 140 years old because he's an honorary son of a.
Those people live the longest.
I know. Dude, he's like type 2 diabetic. He's a cancer survivor. He's had 5 heart attacks. And like, if you knew him, he's like the honoriest old man that you'll ever meet in your entire life. I hope he's watching right now too, because he'll call me out on it. But it's just crazy. So, I mean, I guess you and I will be talking I'm 47, you're 37. So when I'm like 80 or 90 years old, we can have another, Redcast episode and meet up again.
How did you figure out she had AFib? Did she feel it? Or
so we took her in for a regular thing. And sometimes when she runs around, her heart beats a little bit faster, and she was talking about it. So we had her looked at, and that's when they found there's like a little valve that's supposed to close as a child gets older, and it didn't close all the way. So I think they're gonna go in and close it up, and they keep telling us it's not that big of a deal, but when it's your kid, it's a big deal. So
no, I understand for sure.
Yeah. So moving on, just because I don't want to start crying on the thing over my 6-year-old daughter. The Jim in Minnesota, I'm sure you know him from Twitter or seeing him around on there. He's asking what you see different about Garrett Nelson's game this year, compared to previous years, and why you're so high on him, I guess.
So when I watch the spring game, I have to keep in mind their backup tackles because he absolutely just destroyed them. And I'm like, wow. But they're backup tackles. Prohaska was injured. Corcoran was out. Kind of the presumption is Corcoran will be right tackle, Prohaska left tackle. Obviously, they still have to earn it. I'm still going to advocate for Bryce Benhart to go to guard at some point. But in the spring, I just think they couldn't afford to do that with who was out. But yeah, he made them look kind of silly. I know he was going against someone else, a left tackle in the spring game. So I keep that in mind. But what I saw, because I did a video last fall, why the Huskers were struggling to get after the quarterback. And there's 3 basic steps to getting after the quarterback. Your get off, your first step. I mean, I've seen guys beat Hall of Fame quarterbacks based on their first Hall of Fame offensive tackles based on their first step alone. Walter Jones for the Seahawks, I think it was 2008. And I remember because I was a rookie watching Thanksgiving Day. DeMarcus Ware for the Cowboys going against Walter Jones, 2 Hall of Famers. And DeMarcus Ware had like 3.5 sacks. And basically, he got 3 sacks based off his first step alone. He was by Walter with his first step before he ever got out of his stance. And then his dip and lean was so low, Walter couldn't get to him. Garrett's first step has always been fine. I always thought, and I know he's not with us, so maybe this might make Husker fans mad. I always thought Phil Darius Payne had a great first step, the best one on the team. Obviously, he's moved on, but Garrett's always had a good one. I'll come back to step 2. Step 3 was the finish. a lot of guys have a great first step. They have great hand moves. They have great technique as far as getting by the linemen, and they just don't quite finish like their hair's on fire. Go back and watch J.J. Watt. The guy's a physical freak, but before he got all banged up and he was getting like 20 sacks more years than not, like him, you remind me of Grant Wistrom in college. He would run 30 yards downfield having no idea if the play was still going to be going on. He'd follow a quarterback on his bootleg, is carrying out his fake, whether he knew he had it or not. Sometimes he'd have it. When most guys would be like, I don't think you've got it, I'm going to jog over here. But he would end up getting a sack based on effort alone. Garrett's always had those two things. Good first step, great finish. What he was struggling with is very typical, because he's still a young player, it's very typical of a young player. How do I get the hands off? The offensive lineman, he's trying to punch me away. He's trying to lock up right here. This might shock you, but they don't call holding very much. And
especially not against Nebraska.
Oh, man. Good grief. So my senior year, the only holding penalty called all year was on me. They actually called it on me. I was so pissed. My jersey had holes all over it after some games. I was like, you got to be kidding me. But if a lineman gets you here, they won't call it, and they shouldn't. If they get you out here, that's a holding. Right here, they basically won the hand placement battle. And so a lot of times he would have great get off. He'd make contact with the lineman, and he couldn't get off. He couldn't get off the block. And he would get stuck because they'd have him right here. And so for me, his technique, his pad level, dipping and ripping, getting low, like I talked about DeMarcus Ware, he'd be so low, Walters couldn't catch up to him. His pad level, his dip and lean is much better. Getting the offensive lineman's hands off. Like a lot of D linemen in the NFL will do martial arts in the offseason because they get so good with their hands, or boxing or something like that. I think people underestimate how important a hand placement is. Like, I don't know how to wrestle, but every once in a while there's some, I have people who are like, all right, you're the NFL player. Let's see what you got. And I know for a fact that they were wrestlers, and they come at me, I'll get their hands off, chop them to the ground, and they're done, even though I don't actually know how to do what we're doing better than them, because it's not an actual fight. It's like a mini wrestling match.
Yeah.
But I'll win the hand battle, and then they're done. And so for me, that's the thing he's always struggled with, is fundamental techniques of getting off of a block. And he looked so much better in the spring game. I'm curious to see what he looks like against starting offensive linemen, but he looked a lot better.
So, first off, last night's show, I don't know if you had a chance to check it out at all, but Redcast Dave was saying that he would love to see you take me down, like, have me rush at you and have you throw me down on the ground. And it's just, I'm laughing because I'm 5'9", 175, 180 pounds. You're like 6'6", probably still 225, 230 right now. So
I'm 270.
270. Okay. Yeah. So, And so, as Honky just put up there, we'd all like to see Adam take Rob down. So who knows, maybe we can make that happen someday for charity or something like that. So you were talking about the offensive line guys from the spring game, and I'm curious if there's any of the guys on the offensive line that you saw that were playing that you think are going to have a chance to make an impact on that side of the ball, because obviously as a defensive line guy, you're watching how the offensive line guys are playing as well, right? Watching those trenches. Is there anyone on that line that you're seeing as a possible guy that's either going to be a starter or a really good, 6 or 7 man rotation guy?
I mean, the offensive line, they struggled in the spring game, especially when it came to pass protection. When it came to run blocking, they looked a little bit better. I as expected, I thought Nardini Willie looked pretty good. Trent Hickson, he looks like he'll be solid at center. He was taking a great leadership role with some of the guys on the sideline. I know that Kevin Williams got some reps in there. I feel like he's a little bit better run blocker than pass blocker. I do think that while the tackles struggled mightily in the spring game, again, the projected starters were out, I felt like the inside of the O-line played okay. Like, I don't remember a whole lot of pressure up the middle, at least not on a consistent basis. And when we ran the ball, most of the holes were up the middle. So I kind of felt like the guards and the tackles, Hickson to Willie, I see potential in Williams, especially with his size. Just, he's getting used to going against, guys at Northern Colorado. It's a Big Ten type competition. Hopefully by the time the season rolls around, Hunter Anthony, a little bit, if I'm being honest, hopefully a little bit more fluidity comes over the summer. But I thought the interior guys definitely looked better than the two tackles in the spring games.
Yeah, I mean, and I the reason why I was asking is because obviously, Kevin Williams is a Northern Colorado guy, which is right up the street from me and right down the road from you. And We had him on the show a little while ago, and he's that kid's determined. I have to say, and talking with Benning too, because Benning knows him. I guess he coached him in high school. Was saying that that kid, like, he's just an animal out there on the field, just tough mentally, tough physically, and really, really smart. Like a really, really smart kid. So it's it'll be interesting to see. You're right, his development on that line too. So. Jim in Minnesota asked again too, how are guys like Butler and Tannor able to generate so much power on their pass rush at 240 and 225?
When I watched Jamari Butler, he has some physical gifts about him. And I mentioned it in I think the video I did the other day. Like when I watch him, he has just some movements, just some physical gifts about him that not everybody has, and hopefully it doesn't mean anything if you don't develop it. Hopefully they develop it, but you'd be amazed at how DeMarcus, where he was getting around Walters that day, but what was he, 250?
Yeah.
Walters was like 340.
Yeah, but
Ware was overpowering him time and time again. You'd be surprised when you learn certain fundamentals and techniques. How, if you can bench a lot, that's great. All right. But if you have great fundamentals, and like if I'm trying to engage out here, that's awful.
Yeah. That you want to find your center, right? Like, own
me right here.
Yeah.
But if all of a sudden I can have low pad level, whether I can bench more or not, I just got stronger. If my feet are still moving instead of being dead on contact, it's like I just benched more. If my hands are inside and I'm doing the steering wheel and I'm turning and I'm pulling and that lineman starts to reach ahead and then I snatch him on his face, it's like I'm the strongest player on earth. It's all about the feeling their weight. It's all about the fundamentals and techniques and obviously being strong in the weight room. But I'm just going to be honest. Offensive linemen tend to be lazy. And if you can take advantage of it, if you get
calling them out.
Yeah. D linemen aren't smart. Offensive linemen are lazy. Okay, whatever. But if you can take advantage of, little things here and there that they might give away pre-snap, like they tend to look where they're going or they tend to lean. Just they're trying to get that. Thank you for quoting me. Tag Rob Zadiska in that for me in that tweet. But anyways, they tend to give away little things here and there. Of all the years I played, there was only one offensive lineman that I could not get a decent pre-snap read on, and that was Tyron Smith of the Cowboys. Everyone else I could get some sort of a pre-snap read on way more often than not. So if you can take advantage of that and you can do those little basic fundamentals and techniques, you can play a lot stronger, especially if you combine that with explosion. If you've got explosion, maybe you don't bench squat 500 pounds, but if you got explosion, and you combine that with basic fundamentals and techniques, and you take advantage of the little things that you might be able to pick up pre-snap, you can look a lot stronger than you may be in the weight room. Like your football strength might be a lot stronger than weight room strength.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too that and I can apply what you just said to real life too about defensive and offensive linemen, because it took under 24 hours to set up this show with you. And I've been messaging back and forth with Dr. Rob for like 2 weeks to try to set something up with him. So, I mean,
he's so, haven't you heard he's kind of a big deal?
No, he's a super nice guy. It's funny. Actually, the messages just between him and I started as like a joke from like a Twitter thread that was going on, and we were joking back and forth inside there, and then like, you should come on the show sometime and talk about this. And he's been busy because he's kind of a big deal. He is a doctor, and he's a much bigger deal than Redcast Rob. So
I just went on Doc Talk and I said, what did I say? I said something about, because we were talking about the cardio version when they shocked my heart back into normal rhythm, and I said, yeah, but are you even a real doctor, Rob? I mean, you're not even a real doctor or something like that, because he's an anesthesiologist.
Yeah.
When you're getting surgery, they're the most important guy in the room.
I was going to say that's the one person I don't want making a mistake, right?
Well, I did point that out. But then I said something about O-lineman, but then I shared the story of Adam Goldberg, not from the ABC show, the Goldbergs, but he played at Wyoming, and I went against him every day at the Rams. And he's like, I can teach my Labrador Retriever to play D-line, see ball, get ball. Yeah. And I was like, I'd hate to say he's wrong, but he's not that far
But
off.
he's really
So
not
it goes
that
both
far off.
ways.
Yeah, it's funny too. You said he's an anesthesiologist. We actually have a good friend of the show and one of Honky's fraternity brothers, Gary, who is an anesthesiologist, and that's who I went to this. We went to the spring game together and all that. He's a season ticket holder for the Huskers, and it's funny because you talk to these guys, they have great sense of humors, and you're just going like, oh my God, like there's literally a chance at some point in my life where my life could be in this guy's hands, right? Like, yeah, my mom was a nurse for 50 years plus, and she was a surgical nurse operating room, and she retired because it got to the point to where the doctors coming in were so young, she was basically telling them how to do the surgeries.
Oh yeah,
right.
yeah.
So, it's sometimes you have to remember who the smartest people in the room are and trust them.
My mom was a nurse for 44 years, and she ended up, so she was 95% deaf, so she had hearing aids. So I think ultimately it got to the point where it wasn't safe because she couldn't hear enough.
Yeah.
I was amazed she could do it as long as she did, but she got sick and tired of everything going computerized. Because her generation, she wanted to write it out. It's so much harder to learn the computers. But before my first ever surgery, after my rookie year with the Rams, or going into the first surgery, I literally just read an article about a lady who had a surgery and woke up during the surgery, couldn't open her eyes, couldn't move, couldn't tell anybody, and could feel everything. Okay. And so going into my first ever surgery, shoulder surgery, I was like, I wanted to know everything about the anesthesiologist. Like, he was by far the most important person in the room. I was terrified that was going to happen. So no, Dr. Rob is obviously, he's very important if you haven't heard.
Yeah, he is. Honky's asking a question here too, because I guess he wants me to get back to football or something. I don't know, whatever that is. He's saying any memories from the 2-hour full contact spring scrimmage in 2005 where Zac Taylor, no green jerseys, won the starting quarterback spot. And the reason Honky's asking that, full disclosure, is he was at that spring scrimmage watching that when that happened. So, he has fond memories of it, but maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
So my guess, my feeling that I've had ever since then. So 04 was not a great season. Callahan's first year, Joe Daly struggled mightily. There were some issues, and I don't think Daly was thrilled with Coach Callahan. I think he even referred to him as Billy C in front of the media at one point, which obviously didn't go over great. And then they brought in Zac. And I got the feeling from the first day of winter conditioning that they were waiting to replace Joe with Zac. And they were just waiting for the opportunity to do that. Almost like when an NFL franchise has a quarterback and then they draft a guy. Like, when can we just make the switch?
Right. Ask Ryan Tannehill about that one, right?
Well, oh, man. People are all over him that, why don't you want to mentor him and this and that? And, okay.
Man, I don't want to teach somebody how to do my job. I've been spending all this time trying to make myself invaluable.
Yeah, from a team perspective, a fan perspective, he looks like a selfish, arrogant jerk. But if you're in his shoes, this is my career. This is my livelihood.
That's right.
If somebody came in, let's say you work at the grocery store and you're the best, I don't know, you're the best at putting out the fruit. And then all of a sudden, here comes this new, young, fancy, high-drafted fruit guy. Well, I'm telling him to put the grapes in the freaking grain bin. I'm not telling him where to put the grapes. If he can put the grapes better there than I can, then I'm out of a job. You know what I mean? Right. So, terrible analogy, but I think you get the point.
No, I think it's actually a perfect analogy because I can't tell you how many times I've been to the grocery store and couldn't find the grapes I was looking for. So I'm guessing, I'm guessing somebody trained him wrong.
I got the feeling that, and he probably remembers the scrimmage more specifically than I do. I've obviously had 1,000 in my life, but there probably came a point in the spring where they were like, okay, Zac looks good enough. Now we can make the switch. And here's what I do remember from the spring game. We didn't blitz anybody except Joe Daly in the spring game. And he threw an INT, which was then pick 6. And everyone made a big deal of it until the media found out that was the only guy we were blitzing all day. And then that became the story. So there was a struggle between Daly and Callahan.
Yeah, that's that makes sense, and you got to take Honky with a grain of salt too, because he hates the green jerseys, but two, he tried out to be like a team manager back in the 90s and got rejected for that, and then apparently he chased Tom Osborne across campus a couple times and kind of embarrassed himself, and yeah, so it'll be and as he says, I hate Rob. So I mean, it's you gotta take it like that though. But
It's
Hunky,
because the team manager at the time didn't show him how to properly be the team manager. So that's why.
yeah, maybe that's the case because the team manager didn't want to have him take his
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how you feeling? Have you been over, checked out any of the new facilities that they're building right now? We got a tour from Tyler Kai, a good friend of the show's. He's the assistant athletic director over there in charge of fundraising and whatnot. And he gave us a tour of Memorial Stadium and then kind of gave us like a outside tour of the construction that's going on. And curious, have you had a chance to see that? And kind of what do you think about that?
I haven't. I kind of. I don't understand 80% when I'm doing things. I don't like unfinished things. I was supposed to start working out, a while ago, very lightly. But I'm like, if I'm doing the heart surgery, I don't want to work out for 3 weeks and then take a month off to recover from the heart thing. So I don't like partially finished things. So I'm just waiting until it's done, then I'll check it out.
Cool. Well, I don't
That's
want to keep you
weird,
too
but that's my
long.
reason.
Yeah, I don't want to keep you too long. We've been on this for about an hour. I always laugh and we make this joke every time that, we always say it'll be about like 20, 30 minutes and then it goes an hour because the conversation. But, I know you've got an appointment to go to, kind of important, something about your heart,
Yeah, no big deal.
and all that. So, I think, is there a tradition here is we like to give our guests what we like to call a parting shot. Before we do that, just to remind everyone again, the Tom Osborne interview tomorrow on the Carriker Chronicles. What time is that at?
So they'll put it out on YouTube in the afternoon. I will
Okay.
officially post it on Twitter and Facebook at 8 p.m. Central Time tomorrow night.
Okay, cool. And then watch for the Redcast. Ours got moved from Monday at 1 to Wednesday at 1 Central Standard Time. We just had some scheduling conflicts. So Redcasters, look forward to that. And do you have a parting shot you want to give us here for the Redcast?
You know, for me, I've been saying this a lot lately. I appreciate all the people who have reached out in support. Like I said, I've talked to people I haven't talked to since college, high school. One kid, we used to call him Pop Tart in middle school. And, I hadn't talked to him in like 15 years. And so he sends me a text as one example. He goes, "Hey, this is Philip Lindsay." I have no idea who that is because that's not what we called him. We weren't that nice. And I go, "Hey, man, I appreciate it. Who is this?" And he goes, "Pop Tart." He just texts back, "Pop Tart." So we picked up the phone and we called and we chatted. And, I appreciate everyone who's reached out, who's shown support, things of that nature. Prayers for your daughter, for your family. Other than that, I'm hoping to get a foundation going here soon. Every time I'm going to, something else pops up. When that gets more legs, I would love to promote that. Otherwise, Facebook, Twitter, check out the show, Carriker Chronicles on YouTube.
Great, man. And with that, we just like to say that's another edition of the Go Big Redcast. You guys have a great day.